Rumble, show man rumble. Third term loading, fourth term too. Cause we're doing a very good job. A very good job. Read this, my peeps. Fiscal Commissioner Courtney Williams has assessed the wholeness government's budget as credible and achievable. Of course, like literally, when you see the breakdown in this budget, and you know that this budget is something that we can work with as the country. You know, it doesn't run a deficit. Unlike the PNP budget, we are come talk about, well, I don't even know what I'm talking about actually. Just, promise this and promise that with no figures to add to certain promises as it relates to how they're going to achieve these promises and these programs that they're going to put in place. But I want you to hear it from the horse's mouth and also pay close attention to how he rubbish claim of what Julian Robinson made in relation to the whole debt escalating out of control. Watch this, peeps.
It's a credible budget. Fiscal Commissioner Courtney Williams says the government spending plans for 2025-2026 remain within fiscal rules.
The main and most important points made by this report, that is the Economic and Fiscal Assessment Report by the Commission, is that firstly, based on macroeconomic and fiscal projections, which are reasonable and achievable, the current budget being debated, we deem it credible. And secondly, Jamaica's current fiscal policy and the fiscal position are sustainable. That's the position of the Independent Fiscal Commission.
The Independent Fiscal Commission, which began its operations in January, is the successor to the Economic Program Oversight Committee. Its job is to ensure the government does not deviate from the country's hard-won macroeconomic stability. Mr. Williams says this should not be taken for granted.
The Independent Fiscal Commission has a duty to the public. And the very first thing the public should want to hear from any independent review of the national budget is whether it is credible. And any review of the overall fiscal position and policy should state that it is sustainable. These matters are also important because they should not be taken for granted. It is, in fact, for most of our history, this has not been the case.
However, he warns that some long-standing shortcomings remain in how the country approaches the budgeting cycle. These include the absence of the presentation of the fiscal balance for the specified public sector and the absence of established compensation negotiation cycles that align with the budgetary cycle. As part of his budget debate presentation, opposition spokesman Julian Robinson sounded the alarm regarding the country's rising debt.
And for full transparency, Mr. Speaker, let me share with the House. The total public debt stock is estimated to reach $2.2 trillion at the end of fiscal year 25-26. By the end of fiscal year 28-29, the government projects that it will rise to $2.34 trillion. But other people have been saying that we don't need to borrow and that we've been using our own resources to fund everything, right? And it is inaccurate.
But the Fiscal Commissioner disagrees. He says the dollar value of the debt is not an issue. According to Mr. Williams, the increase in debt is being outpaced by the country's growth in GDP and remains sustainable.
How much the country is earning versus how much debt the country owes. So because the GDP is growing, so the GDP nominally is growing, the debt in dollar figure also rises, but the debt is rising at a slower pace than the GDP, and that is important to note. So if the debt is rising at a slower pace, it means that the debt to GDP will be falling, and that will mean you can be on that sustainable trajectory because you are generating more, the country is generating more income than the rate at which it is borrowing.
The country remains on track to reduce its debt to 60% of GDP by 2027. Siobhan Campbell for Nationwide News.
Sure, God no. The show labor rights them is rumbling. Fiscal responsibility is our top priority in Jamaica, and everybody can test to this in relation to who handle the economy more responsible. And we have to say it is the JLP by far. Nobody can detest that. No one. In fact, people, There's a lot of persons, PMP, numbskulls, bloggers talking about the budget did not facilitate anything for small businesses or persons who is at our level, just rich people alone. Yes, it put things in place for. It's totally BS, and we're gonna prove it. Listen these clips from Favour Williams reading out our budget for the fiscal year 2025 to 2026. Listen.
Today I'm Theodore Henry and this is your JIS News for Friday, March 14, 2025. Government is increasing the General Consumption Tax (GCT) exemption threshold for micro, small and medium-sized enterprises (MSMEs), raising it from $10 to $15 million. Minister of Finance and the Public Service Favour Williams announced the move during her opening budget presentation on Tuesday. She says the change is aimed at supporting the growth and development of small businesses.
The latest figure from the Small Business Association of Jamaica is that there were an estimated 422,000 registered small businesses in Jamaica, generating, and get this figure, 80% of the jobs in the Jamaican economy. This means 1,136,240 persons in our workforce are employed by a micro, small, or medium enterprise.
$2 billion has also been allocated through the Development Bank of Jamaica (DBJ) to further support MSMEs.
$2 billion is in the budget for DBJ to allow them to continue to facilitate sustainable growth of startups and MSMEs, and to continue support women-led initiatives, entrepreneurship training, including digital skills bootcamp.
Another sector is also being incentivized with the government's plan to reduce the bond on duties paid by new car dealers from 100% to 20%. The Minister of Finance says this decision is in response to requests from stakeholders in the new car dealership industry.
They said that 100% bond on the duties they pay ties up too much of their capital. Madam Speaker, Jamaica imported some 50,786 motor vehicles worth $81 billion in 2022. And if you look at the duties are between 67 to about 88% of the value. And if you assume the lowest duty, you can see that the capital tied up against the duties is significant. We listened to the industry, and now, instead of 100% bond against the duty, we have reduced that to 20%.
Minister Williams says this has impact beyond the car dealership industry, as the reduction will not only free up capital to expand existing businesses, but to also invest in other ventures, hire more people, and contribute to overall economic growth. Tax Administration Jamaica TAJ will be introducing regular Saturday operations at select tax offices in every parish. The TAJ currently provides weekend services every last Saturday of the month at select locations. Expanding and regularizing this is aimed at improving taxpayer convenience and boosting revenue collection.
While we strongly encourage the use of our online access, we recognize that it takes time to transition some people to the online world. And so I asked the Commissioner of Taxes to have a tax office opened in every parish on a Saturday to ease the congestion during the week and make it easier.
Help is on the way for onion farmers in Abbey, St. Thomas Western, who struggle to access their properties during heavy rains. Agriculture Minister Floyd Green gave the commitment during a recent tour of the constituency's onion farms. He revealed that an engineering team from the Rural Agricultural Development Authority, RADA, would work with farmers to ensure they could access their farms, even during challenging weather conditions.
Clearly, they have an access challenge. It's okay when the river is not doing so badly, but they need at least a bridge that they can come into this area and tend to their crops. So we're going to ask the RADA team to look at it and Once we have the engineering designs, then we will see how we take that from the Farm Road program.
In addition to providing bridge access to farmers, Minister Green highlighted plans to incorporate more technology into farming. This includes the purchase of drones to improve production efficiency and enhance the financial benefits for farmers.
This is what agriculture is about. It's about people making wealth, taking care of their families, and leading our food security drive.
Looking ahead, the minister projects that 2025 will be the biggest production year for onions, signaling strong growth and potential for the sector. Renovation works on the Yalis Market in St. Thomas should be done by the end of this year. Minister of Local Government and Community Development, Desmond McKenzie, gave the update during a tour of the market on Wednesday to assess the progress of cleanup activities. The visit came after the minister toured the market in late February and committed to cleaning and reopening the space for vendors to use while renovation plans are finalized. On Wednesday, he again assured vendors they would soon have the market to ply their wares.
The registration process will commence, but I want to make it clear that this is not the end of the process. We're going to be facilitating the vendors in the market until we would have completed the assessment and the budgeting for the renovation of the market. And I want to tell the vendors, and this will be good news for them, during the period of the assessment and the renovation of the market, the vendors will not be asked to pay any market fees for that period of time that they are occupying the facility.
The Jamaica Urban Transit Company, JUTC, will soon begin testing a self-charging battery electric bus. The bus has the potential to operate over 1,500 kilometers before requiring refueling. The unit can also last up to 3 months before needing a rapid battery recharge. Transport Minister Darrell Vaz says this initiative reflects the government's commitment to providing eco-friendly public transportation.
At present, we have a total of 170 buses which have been procured for JUTC with an additional 100 in procurement. 70 of those are fueled by compressed natural gas. The planned infusion of this additional 70 CNG buses should see greater reliance on CNG-powered buses to move commuters and a correspondingly reduced dependence on diesel-powered buses.
And finally, Prime Minister Dr.